Nothing, baby. Let's go. That's the world now. That's the whole world.
Welcome to the Lone Star College Football Show. I'm your host, Chris Daly. Each episode, I will bring you news and information about college football in Texas, not just the FBS school, anyone who plays college football in the great state of Texas. I will do so by talking with the people making it happen on the gridiron, the head coaches, the staff, the players, but mostly the head coaches. Thank you for joining us. Today, I sit down with one of my longtime friends, longtime co-workers, longtime podcasting expert, and generally smart guy when it comes to college football in Texas. Yes, we will talk with Terry Bennet after this message. And we have to take a second to thank our title sponsor this year, Junior's Smokehouse. Yeah, Junior's Smokehouse, you can find at juniorsjerky.com. They have everything you can imagine: pork and venison sausage, beef sausage, all kinds of great dried meats, jerkies, wonderful spices, rubs, you name it. In fact, you have to go check out the website just to figure it out. There's great gift boxes. And I have to tell you, if you want to guarantee that your gift is ready by Christmas, make sure you go online and place your order before December 13th. They get very busy sending out probably the most wonderful gift you can give somebody for Christmas: some beef jerky, some dried sausage, some good manly food. That's Junior Smokehouse on Highway 59 in Texas between Wharton and El Campo. But again, you can find all of it online at juniorsjerky.com. You can also reach owner Lane Tabola and his staff at 979-531-0888. You can order online, you can order on the phone, you can go by like I do. Luckily, I'm so close to it. And check out some of the amazing processed meats they have. Such good stuff. That's Junior's Texas Best Smokehouse. All right, everybody, join me in welcoming Terry Bennet to the show. Terry, gosh, first time to be on this show, not your first time to be on a show.
I feel like on every show on our network, we have a little passport stamp, and so I'm getting mine stamped for this show. I can prove that I've been here. How's it going today, Chris?
It's going great. It's going great. And, wow, I tell you, college football in Texas has been so fun this year, and I think largely because of doing this show, but even more so it seems like we've had so many great games and great inter-Texas matchups. We'll talk about the big one later. But other than that, what games stood out to you for Texas teams?
Well, I think, outside of Texas and Tech, and really on a national scale, this one was bigger, was A&M in Arkansas. And I love when these two teams play. It's the Old Southwest Conference. B, it's at Jerry World, which, however you feel about Jerry Jones or the Cowboys or the Sun when it comes to, that place is electric during college football because A&M and Arkansas filled it. I think it was like 98,000 was there. And then just the game in of itself, it was a crazy game. A&M probably should have lost. Arkansas outplayed them for much of the game. But got to give the Aggies credit. They have a big fumble return, and then it ends like every game is ending this year. Oddly, the ball hits the top or misses the top of the upright for Arkansas, or they win. So, yeah, you nailed it. I think it seems like football's a little crazier this year in college. I think maybe it's because we're finally 100% non-COVID. All the stands are packed, and you're seeing the players feed off that energy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this game, a lot of people were talking about firing Jimbo, but that one certainly has to help that case.
It does, but the issue for A&M is it's who they lost to. I don't know if they can come back from that and be a national contender. I think the only way they can do that is, of course, they're going to have to run the table, and they're going to have to beat Alabama really bad. They're going to have to beat Georgia really bad. And then I think people will go, okay, let's bring them back to the table. But losing to Appalachian State, who just lost to James Madison last week, in a crazy game for them. We talk about crazy games. I wish we did an App State football show because every game of theirs this year has been weird. But I just don't know if A&M can come back from that. Now, he can do what Mac Brown used to do back in the early 2000s before they got consistently good, where they would always get beat by like a Stanford or a North Carolina State. It would just be – I remember the North Carolina State game, Texas had like 3 punts blocked. It just weird ways that they lost. Well, Mac Brown learned to kind of reset the sights and say, okay, we might not can do this, but we can still do this, which will build to the next year. And I think Jimbo's doing that, and I think smartly, because everybody keeps pointing to this year, but this is a young Aggie team. This is a very young Aggie team. I always felt this year was going to be laying the frameworks, and then next year you start to see if it bears fruit or not.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be fun to watch, that's for sure. Speaking of fun, the Iron Skillet has returned to TCU as they knock off SMU. That's a big rivalry there.
Yeah, and that's one of the most underrated rivalries in Texas, and partly because for 20 years it was kind of weak. And then TCU got really good in the 2000s, and SMU has finally become consistently good. Also, both teams kind of play, up style type offenses, so you tend to have really good games like you did this week. I like what Sonny Dykes is doing, and he adds to the rivalry because he was at SMU and then he flipped over to TCU. But yeah, it's a great game, and it was a great game Saturday, and it was back and forth. But you saw the depth of TCU kind of wear SMU down.
Yeah, definitely. And TCU, people may or may not know, is one of the very few, like 3, maybe 4 teams in Texas that is still undefeated. Angelo State's the other one. I think Trinity. There's one other one. I can't remember.
Yeah. Speaking of, real quick, Angelo State's a powerhouse. They've got a really good offensive player in Zach Bronkers, whose dad's a coach, and that kid is a beast. And in 2017, you had A&M Commerce win the national championship, and you had Mary Hardin Baylor compete. I legitimately think Angelo State, it might be their year this year.
Nice. Definitely. I enjoyed talking with their coach earlier this season. Baylor, of course, knocks off Iowa State. UTSA continues to do well. Took care of Texas Southern. UH over Rice. Oh, and Texas State knocks off Houston Christian. And you may go, who the heck is Houston Christian? Well, they literally this week changed their name.
Yeah, I've never seen a school change their name so quick. Now, Houston Christian, it used to be Houston Baptist. I have a long relationship with them. Yep. Their girls basketball team used to be a powerhouse in AIA, and I back in 04, 05, back-to-back years went and broadcast their Final Four games, or they do a tournament, they do regionals, and then you go to what's called the Final Four. It's really the Final Six, and you play a round-robin tournament. It's really fun. And they were Houston Baptist. And I understand changing your name, but wait till the next year. Take your time. Slowly rebrand. I mean, just the amount of money they waste in having to change, because they said they're changing out all the placards, all the signs immediately. I know that there's some reasons outside of sports for them doing it, but man, I just think that's a mistake, because you're trying to get people to remember who you are in a big sea of football in Texas, and you just do a big curveball.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to try to segue off a curveball. This isn't really a curveball. This is more of a standing strike as SFA just pours it on Warner University 98-0. Yeah,
you and I were laughing. You went to SFA, and we were saying, man, it's a weird world when SFA is the one paying out the big money game so that they can beat up on somebody. But that's what this was. And let's be fair. I watched all the score. I watched every touchdown. This wasn't SFA really running up the score. Warner's bad. But the fun thing is Warner knows they're bad. They kind of joked about it and was like, hey, yeah, we're going to survive. And I don't necessarily think there's a place for 98-0, but if it's going to happen, it's better when it happens like that, where it's just kind of everybody chuckles about it and moves on. There's no articles about, the poor Warner team, well, they need therapy because they got beat and all that. It was a game. SFA won. and they won and made news. They did everything that they wanted to in that game. They beat a team they should have. They got the fans excited, and they made national news.
Definitely. And interestingly enough, this is only the third most they've ever scored in their history. That was really, really weird after reading that, because growing up in East Texas, I've always kind of followed SFA back when, they were in Division II, and it was like, I don't really remember them rolling out, over 98 points multiple times. But, hey, if 98's your third highest scoring, you've got some offensive history in your program. Definitely. Well, I guess it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Where were you this weekend?
This podcast is certified fresh. Freshmediaworks.com.
Hey, it's not too early to start thinking about the perfect Christmas gift. Yes, if you have college football lovers in your life, they are going to love the board game Saturday Legends. Saturday Legends allows you to play the greatest college football teams of all time against each other based on their real stats. Included in the base set, 2005 Texas, 2001 Miami, 2019 LSU, 1995 Nebraska, 2014 Ohio State, 1945 Army, 1988 Oklahoma State, 2018 Clemson, 2009 Florida, and 1972 USC. And those are just a fraction of the amazing, historically great teams available in the Saturday Legends library. To get your Christmas shopping out of the way early and save money, go to SaturdayLegends.com. Use the code LONESTAR for 10% off your order. That's SaturdayLegends.com. Hey, if you want coverage of your school or just want to give a shout out to your team, leave us a voicemail at 713-568-6361, and we'll play it out on the show. That number again is 713-568-6361. It's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Where were you this weekend?
I was at Texas versus Texas Tech. Grant Goodwin and I, sideline to sideline. We went up to do Bushland versus Dumas to watch that game. Mm-hmm. And in typical Grant Goodwin and I fashion, the week before we were driving, and we'd actually already booked the room for Cuero. We wanted to watch Cuero versus Beeville Jones. Then Beeville Jones got beat, and we were like, well, that kind of takes the shine off of it. And then Cuero got beat by Cal Allen, and we were like, well, that really takes the shine of it. So let's just go from all the way south Texas all the way up to the Panhandle. And I texted a friend, like, hey, we're going to be coming through Lubbock. You want to have lunch? And he was like, yeah, I can't, but hey, I got tickets. You want to go watch Texas versus Tech? And we were like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So that's where we were Saturday. It was hot. It was uncomfortable. But my goodness, it one of the best games that I've seen live as a football game.
Yeah, and I was watching on TV and enjoyed the heck out of it. I can only imagine. I was texting you while you were there. The environment there, Tech is a good environment anyway, but you bring Texas in, man, that's crazy.
Yeah, and the thing I was surprised most at was how many Texas fans were actually there, and Texas Tech, you've always had that, you always hear what it's like, but under McGuire and everything they're doing with their game presentation is off the charts. They had Ric Flair come in, and not only, he didn't just ring the bell and woo, you could tell, it was funny because he's wearing the exact same thing, so you could tell he recorded almost all of this in one day, but he was on a bunch of the third down stops. He would come up with the woo and all that. The crowd, and I'll say this, the crowd, good and bad, is what makes Texas Tech football. They're going to have to figure some things out. First off, Texas Tech fans, don't take this as a rub. You don't need to be rushing the field when you beat the number 22 team in the nation, even if it is Tech. That just that just doesn't look good. And then B, to do the pushing of the players, that's things that's, that's the kind of stuff that Joey McGuire as a program builder has to now deal with. And it's frustrating because the crowd outside of that, like where we were, it was all fun. The Texas Tech fans and the Texas fans, everybody kind of went back and forth. Grant and I were rooting for Texas. I'm a Texas fan, but I mean, like Baylor Cupp, the tight end that made the had the big second half. I think he really is what beat Texas. He's from Baylor. I mean, he's from Brock. I covered him all 4 years. So I'm not rooting against Tech as much as I'm rooting for Texas. So in our section, the fans were awesome. But the game, man, I mean, that was a Joey McGuire special. He lulled Texas in that first half. I remember looking at Grant when it was 31-17 Texas, and I said, I don't feel comfortable with this. And Texas Tech immediately proceeded to march right down the field, and they got those points back. It felt like in 2 drives. You saw the good of both. Everything that Texas can be, we saw. They just have got to figure out how to win on the road in a conference. That's a big thing. And then Texas Tech, you can see how inconsistent they are, but you can see the foundation of the scheme being laid. That offensive scheme, it's very much Mike Leach-like, except for it has a little bit more running. And I think Texas Tech's going to feel really good about themselves in about 4 years when they're in the Big 12, and they might be one of the top teams in the Big 12.
Nice. And I've seen this at every level, whether it's high school, college, many college teams, UTSA the same way, Tech, it seems like there's a tendency to play boring football until it's elimination time, and then they're all amazing. It's like the old Madden game, where whoever had the ball last won.
I mean, that's kind of where we are with football on all levels now. I look at it like the game is won most of the time. The game is won at the end of the first half because if the team that scores at the end of the half gets the ball and scores in the second half, that's a 14-point swing that usually decides the game. Or the game is won in the last 5 minutes where possessions all of a sudden become – sometimes you want to say, oh, that's going to be a premium, but they don't. It's weird how many games in the last 5 minutes – like the Texas game. Texas Tech hits the field goal with 25 seconds left. That should have been it.
Yeah.
And in Texas, in 3 plays, is kicking the game-tying field goals. You couldn't – that didn't happen 20 years ago. 20 years ago, 25 seconds, everybody thought it was over. And I always say it was Bill Parcells and Dallas Cowboys Monday night against the Giants, and they gave up a field goal, and there was like 13 seconds left. And the ball was at the 45, and Monday Night Crew's all, starting to talk about, well, next week we're going to see this and this, and the Cowboys will fall to, and it took one pass, they got it over, they kicked the field goal. And it seemed like from that moment on, coaches realized, hey, wait, we can do something with 18 seconds. We can throw the ball 30 yards down the field if we need to.
Yeah, it's kind of the analogy I see there is the 4-minute mile. It was impossible until somebody did it, and now everybody says, oh, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, and that's almost with all world records. Exactly. It takes somebody forever to do it, and then when they do it, then they just keep doing it to where it's like, man, that shouldn't never look like it was hard at all. But yeah, it's exactly right. Once somebody, and that's what I love about sports. Once somebody does something, everybody adapts, and then they add their little 2 cents to it. And then 10 years later, you look back and you go, why wasn't games like this always like that? Because on YouTube, I like to watch a lot of classic stuff, and you'll watch a team be down 7 points, and there'll be 4 minutes left. And they're treating it like the game's over. Like they just can't drive down the field and score. Now, in 4 minutes, I'm expecting both teams to put points up on the board.
There's 3 scores in 4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll put it to you this way. Monday night when Dallas couldn't get that first down, I legitimately said, okay, this is going to overtime. I was very surprised when Dallas actually stopped them with 2 minutes, or less, like I think it was 1:40, and they didn't even hardly move down the field.
Well, let's talk about some of the games that are coming up this week. Again, you mentioned I graduated from SFA, so our biggest rival, Sam Houston State, will be taking on SFA this week. That should be that's always a great game, regardless of where it is, who's a better team. I don't know. I think Sam Houston State's probably a better team right now, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, Sam Houston's not the team that they've been. They're, I think, 1-2 this year. I mean, when they lost to A&M and they lost to North Arizona, which that's the game they usually don't lose. A&M Commerce, and that's my school. And A&M Commerce has built themselves up. They won the 2017 Division II National Championship. But they, just like Sam Houston, just like SFA, just like every Texas college, has decided they're moving up to D1. And they gave Sam Houston everything they could handle. And that surprised me. I really thought that Sam Houston was going to beat them by 2 or 3 touchdowns, and it was a 10-point game. Speaking of A&M Commerce, the head coach of SFA, Freddie Carthel, is the guy who won the national championship at A&M Commerce. He's got SFA humming, Chris. I actually think SFA beats them. And, the only thing keeping it closer is that I think it's in Sam Houston. I think that game is at Houston. That's right. It's at RG.
Neutral, yeah.
Yeah, give me SFA, and I'm saying that period. I think SFA wins that game. I think they might end up winning it by a couple scores. Trey Self, their quarterback, he played up at North Richland Hills. He is having a huge year, and yes, the Warner game does help. But he's having a huge year. And then Darrell Wembley, their running back, they're not going to run the ton, but they're going to run right when you least expect it. Give me SFA 42-35.
Wow. Nice. Like I said, either way, I think that's a 7-point game. But what else you see out there this week?
Well, let's look at the Big 12. You've got, Texas. How will they bounce back? West Virginia's a little bit better than I think people thought. They're 2-2. I think Texas bounced back because Texas. It wasn't like, and this is why I guess as a Longhorn fan I wasn't too frustrated. I didn't feel like they choked the game away. They didn't have 3 fumbles in a row or anything. Like Texas Tech just kind of caught up to them and wore them down. I think they'll double their score this week against West Virginia. I'm curious about TCU and OU.
Well, before you get to that one, let me ask you about Texas. What is the latest on Quinn Ewers?
Well, he warmed up last week. I legitimately thought he was going to play some because he warmed up. He looked really good in the warm-ups. I think you'll see him this week. Now, I will tell you, as a Texas fan, I would not mind if they kind of maybe set him out to Oklahoma. I think in the perfect world, they will. I think that they can beat West Virginia this week without him. So if they want to sit him and then bring him back to Oklahoma, I'm perfectly fine with it. But if he's 100% healthy, I'm perfectly fine with him playing this week.
I don't know. I'm with you there. If he's healthy, I'd use him just because you don't want his only 2 games to be the 2 biggest games of the season.
Yeah, that's true. But I think Hudson Card is getting a little bit of grief for this Texas Tech game when, he had 1 bad throw that was early in the game. Texas Tech didn't even capitalize off that interception. He was nails in that second half. He scrambled on a couple of big first downs. I know the lead evaporated, but he made 2 big plays to put Texas up 34-17. And then, like we said, with 18 seconds or 25 seconds left, he throws 3 darts to get them into field goal position. I think people are. I don't know. I feel like Quinn Ewers is getting that. It's like the old Gary Hogaboom for the Cowboys, where everybody thinks. I always see from Quinn's a quarter and a half. It was a nice quarter and a half. But I just think people are sleeping on Hudson Card, and that's why I kind of feel like they might go with Card one more game. But I do like your point that do you really want his first full game and a quarter and a half to be against what we think will be 2 top 15 teams? But I don't know because let's go to TCU OU. Yeah. Dude, OU, we were in the hotel room watching that in Snyder, Texas, and as frustrating as the Texas loss was, OU got manhandled. Adrian Martinez, the quarterback who used to be at Nebraska, transferred over to Kansas State, threw for over 200 yards, a couple touchdowns, ran for 200 yards and a couple touchdowns. They had a 5'0" running back. I can't think of his name now. He ran for like 194 yards. So I don't know if Texas is going into the Cotton Bowl in 2 weeks playing a ranked OU team. I think TCU might beat them this week.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. And again, regardless of where or if OU is ranked, it's the Red River rivalry. It's a big game.
Yes, and over the last 25 to 30 years, OU has owned the rivalry, but Texas does seem to pull off some of the more what you call upsets. I don't think this year is going to be an upset. I think both teams are young and both teams are starting year 2. Brent Venables year 1 coaching. I think they're all adjusting to that. I don't know if either one of them are even winning the conference this year. We've got Oklahoma State and Baylor this week. We might as well call it, Baylor versus the other Texas school that just resides in Oklahoma with how many Texas they have. But, man, that's going to be a really good game. I thought Baylor's win against Iowa State last week was what you call an old-school professional win. They went on the road. They did what they needed to do. It was not pretty, and they got the win. Oklahoma State, last year it was all defense. This year it looks like Oklahoma State of old. It's more offense. I think Baylor wins that game.
Nice. I think that game is going to go a long way towards determining conference championship.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that. The winner will take a big step forward. And, we got to talk about the elephant in the Big 12 room, and that's Kansas, 4-0. I still – you want to look at who they beat. They beat Tennessee Tech. They went on the road to West Virginia. They beat Houston, but I think we're realizing Houston's not as good as what we thought they were going to be.
Right.
And they beat Duke last week. Good scale. Hey, for Kansas, that's amazing. We'll see this week. They host Iowa State, and then next week they're on the road to TCU, and then they get the trio of Oklahoma, Baylor, and Oklahoma State. So we're going to know pretty quick about them. But the Big 12's wide open. Texas and OU both losing. They're in no way out of it. I have a feeling that we might even see the number 2 team in the Big 12. Remember, they just play each other for the Big 12 championship. Wouldn't shock me if the 2 team has 2-3 losses, because and it's not a bad thing. I know that won't make the playoffs, but just for football, the Big 12 is really fun this year because there's not a lot of difference from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, you remember the very first interview this season here with Joey McGuire. That's the point he made. He said it's as wide open as it's ever been.
Yeah, and everybody everybody kept doing the whole, oh, that's sweet, they beat Texas, but that's not just all that sweet. They're now 1-0 in the Big 12. Yeah. They're now in a position to where they control their own fate. And the great thing is you get a win against one of the other teams like a Texas that you think is going to be there in the end. You've got a buffer, because now if you and Texas it's just y'all 2 evened up, you have the tiebreaker. And so and it also makes you wonder now, and I know Aggie fans will scuff and act like it, but you cannot tell me with how the Big 12 has been the last 10 years, A&M doesn't wish they'd have stayed in the Big 12, because they would have owned the Big 12. Yeah. I mean, someone might still be there, because they would. I've always maintained that the Johnny Manziel team would have won the national championship because they would have been in the Big 12 and they would have been protected from having to run through that SEC, which at that time, I do think the SEC is very overrated, but at that time, the SEC had all the skins on the wall. Yeah, definitely. And you're right. They would have probably run the table in the Big 12. And I think they could have a few times with the teams that they've had that have ended up in that fair to middle and part of that SEC West. They have Mississippi State this week. And again, this is another interesting game, because if A&M is back, it's funny how that's the joke about Texas, but now we're already doing it with A&M. They should be able to roll Mississippi State. Mississippi State's okay. They're a Mike Leach team. They're going to look good at times. They look good against Memphis. They look good against Arizona. And then the offense went to crap against an average defense like LSU. They beat Bowling Green last week. I think it was 45-14. But Aggie fans, you know what it's like with Mike Leach. You also know that you're probably going to get his best game plan, because for all the talk about Mike Leach and Texas, it was always Mike Leach at A&M that he loved to just stick his into their craw more than any other team. Yeah, definitely. Another game involving a college team from Texas, Prairie View A&M taking on Grambling. There's a lot of history in that matchup. Yeah, I grew up on the Texas-Louisiana border, and one of the things I always loved about back then the channels out of Shreveport is they showed all the Louisiana coaching school TV shows. Now, people don't know about those now, but yeah, they used to be a thing. They would do a weekly show for about 30 minutes, talk about last week's game, kind of where I grew up with that model of how we do our coaching shows now. And Grambling, Eddie Robinson and all that. And also in that time frame, Prairie View was just bad. That's all you knew about Prairie View. They were historically bad. And they were so historically bad that they broke their own losing record 2 times. But the last 10 years, Prairie View's been a competitive football team. You even look right now, they're 2-2, but their 2 losses have been solid losses They lose to, I'm trying to pull up the schedule here. They beat Southern to begin things. They lose to ACU, Abilene Christian. They lose to Incarnate Word, both competitive games. And then they beat Alabama State last week, 24-14. I like Prairie View in this game. Gramblin's kind of been scuffling along the last few years, and I think Prairie View's about a touchdown to 10 points better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Any other games stand out for you?
I think Texas Tech and Kansas State. Kansas State beat Oklahoma. Texas Tech beat Texas. That was the two big 12 moments last week. It's always funny how it works out. It seems like always the next week those two teams will end up playing, and we see that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this game is on the road. And if it is, the last time Texas Tech was on the road, they did not look good in that loss to North Carolina State. The Wolfpack did a good job of forcing Donovan Smith to stay in the pocket. He had a couple of mistakes. He threw a couple interceptions. I put it this way, his home completion percentage is 68%. His road, and that's only one game, but his road is 58%. So that's where, and that's always kind of been Texas Tech thing. You go to Lufkin and it's hard, or Lubbock, not Lufkin, that'd be interesting. You go to Lubbock and it's hard to win, but then you get them on the road. And you go back to that 08 or 07, year where they beat Texas with the Crabtree game. And what Texas Tech fans don't want to remind you is the very next week against Oklahoma, they just absolutely got boat raced like 52-10 and something.
Yeah, definitely. If you could, let people know a little bit about some of the other shows you do on the network before I let you go.
Well, we have everything this year. We started as high school. We have those. We have, 8 or 9 coaches shows. We have sideline to sideline class 4A and 3A show. We're working with Northeast Texas Sports Network. They do a live show on Wednesday. We have a Highway 59 North show that just debuted. Check that out. We do an NFL show, Out Drink the Coverage, intern Noe and I. And in fact, we just nailed down dates where we're going to go do the show live in Dallas at the Frisco Bar and Grill. I was just looking at it today. We're doing like 35 shows a week right now. And you can check them out through, LoneStarGridiron.com or LoneStarPodcast.com. We have business spotlights. We're not just sports. We're everything. So check both of them out and find a show you like. And if you're wanting to, if you have a show that you want to do or a show topic you think interesting, email them to me, Terry at LoneStarGridiron.com, or call our fan feedback line, 713-568-6361. It's a voicemail system. After the beep, just say, hey, my name is, and here's my idea.
Terry, as always, thank you so much. And, go out and enjoy some football this week.
Yeah, headed down to Madisonville Friday and then Bryan Saturday for some 2-3A game action, and then listening to the college football on the way home, and then, of course, the NFL on Sunday.
I love it. I love it. Take care, man. As always, I want to thank Junior Smokehouse, without whom this show would not be possible. If you get a chance, check out juniorsjerky.com. They have everything, and I mean it. If you like some good smoked meats, brisket, spiced rubs, you name it, they have so many great things. Some sausage flavors they have are out of this world. I love it, and I'm particularly a fan of the dried sausage, which they have a lot of great stuff there, too. Check them out, juniorsjerky.com. And if you're in the area, they're on Highway 59 between Wharton and El Campo. Well worth a stop. Once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for being a fan of college football in the Lone Star State. Until next time, I'm your host, Chris Daly, wishing you a great week and victory for your team.